Good day, everyone. My name is A.J. Mittendorf. I've grown increasingly liberal in my old age. I was raised to be quite conservative. For example, I was raised to believe that interracial marriage is wrong. Blacks should marry blacks, whites should marry whites, Asians should marry Asians, on and on and on. And I no longer believe that that is a healthy way of living. In fact, I think that is a morally wrong attitude. There are some issues, though, that I was raised without being taught an option, a conviction. And on one of these, I have landed squarely on the conservative side. At the same time, though, I've remained very silent on this issue until recently because of a recent advancement, as they call it, in this issue. And this advancement is called postnatal abortion, in which a child who has survived pregnancy can be killed if the child proves to be deformed or inconvenient or a burden to the parents. And we can absolve ourselves of any wrongdoing by calling it abortion. If we can abort a baby, when is abortion going to end? At the terrible twos? At adolescence? When the child becomes independent? If we don't put a stop to it, we never know when it's going to end. So I will be discussing the topic of abortion in general, but I have two disclaimers first. The first one is in two parts. A, I will not be discussing pregnancies that are the result of rape. And B, I will not be discussing pregnancies in which that put the mother's life at risk. I concede you the point that for these two rare and extreme circumstances, the procedure of abortion must remain available. My second disclaimer is that I'm not judging anyone. If you are pro-choice or if you've had an abortion, I am not here to judge you. My purpose for this video is to explain my perspective on this issue and explain why I am recently speaking out much more than I have before. For those of you who were my students, I am following a standard essay format, the very same that I taught you in English class. So if you'd like to follow along and take notes, you're welcome to do so. My first point is not original with me. However, it is still a part of my own convictions. It is also integral to my entire thinking. So I will discuss it, and hopefully I'll be adding at least some of my own new perspective on this issue, on this point. And this point is that humanity begins at conception. I saw a Facebook post recently that compared a man's ejaculate with a zygote or a fetus. And I want to be very clear on this. A sperm cell is not a human being, any more than an unfertilized egg is a human being. But when a sperm cell joins an egg, they become a human being, almost virtually instantaneously. Egg plus sperm equals human as surely as 23 plus 23 equals 46. Again, let me emphasize, I'm not trying to sway anyone here. I am simply explaining my perspective. Before fertilization, each gamete, the sperm or the egg, has 23 individual chromosomes. After fertilization, the newly formed zygote has 23 pairs of chromosomes. So a zygote from human parents has 46 chromosomes in total, just like any other human being. Therefore, that fertilized egg is a human being and deserves our protection. There are other ideas in this point I'd like you to consider. At the point of fertilization, terminology changes. The two gametes, the sperm or the egg, become a single zygote. At the point of fertilization, the biology changes. 46 individual chromosomes from two separate cells become 23 pairs of chromosomes within a single cell made of those two. At the point of fertilization, the math changes. 2 gametes with 23 chromosomes each are lost to the one zygote with 46 chromosomes. This is not a transition. It's not a phase. It's not a stage of development or a process. Fertilization is virtually instantaneous. 1 + 1 = 1. Clearly, something changes at the point of fertilization. The sperm cell is not a human. The unfertilized egg is not a human. Put a sperm and an egg together and you have something entirely new, and I contend that that something new is a human being. The zygote is the stage, not fertilization. A zygote from human parents is a human, just like a toddler is a human, like an adolescent is a human, like an adult is a human, like an infant is a human. Again, I'm not trying to sway. I am just explaining my perspective. Point number 2. In contrast with popular mythology, abortion is not a woman's issue. With any abortion, there are 4 people to be considered. The first, of course, is the mother, not in order of importance, just in order of the list. Again, I'm not talking about a pregnancy that is a result of rape or a pregnancy in which the mother's life is in danger. I'm talking about a woman who is pregnant but finds the child to be a burden or a challenge to her lifestyle. It's not my intention to trivialize it, but I also don't want to over-dramatize it. But this woman is choosing to prematurely end her pregnancy, but she is just one of 4 people. The second person to be considered is the baby. And to be honest, at this point in the argument, it doesn't really matter whether you agree with me that humanity begins at conception or not. The indisputable fact is that the little body in the womb feels and reacts to every minute of a long and agonizingly painful death independently of the mother. That little body is part of the equation and deserves consideration in this issue. Those unborn babies cannot speak for themselves, and I choose to join with those who would provide a voice for them. The third person to be considered is the father. And I agree that it's sad and criminal that so many men in our society refuse to step up to the plate of responsibility when it comes to child rearing. But even if a man does choose to be responsible, he often has no choice about the mother aborting a pregnancy. Even if he wants to raise the baby, if she has chosen abortion, the father often has no rights in the matter. In fact, it's often said that he has no right to interfere with an abortion, even though the child is equally his. These men deserve consideration in this issue. The last person is the taxpayer. I'd like to introduce you to Carl, my imaginary friend. Carl duteously pays his taxes. He's a respected member of his society. He's friendly and kind, and he's generous with whatever he has. Carl is also devoutly religious. What religion he belongs to isn't important. He could be Sikh or Muslim or Buddhist or Jew or Christian. It doesn't make any difference. What is important is that he has a family, that he has taught his family to revere his God, that he practices what he preaches, and while he's not perfect, his heart is in the right place. Like many religious people, Carl also believes that murder is wrong, and that murderers will stand accountable before God after their deaths for that action. And since Carl also agrees with me that humanity begins at conception, Carl believes that abortion is murder. Now, let me be very clear. Carl has never attacked anyone. He has never publicly denounced an abortion clinic or anyone entering or leaving a clinic. His method of fighting is to vote for government officials who agree with his perspective on this issue, and he prays for them. But in his prayers, he is also daily begging for forgiveness because he believes that he is party to murder. Not because he has actively hurt anyone, but because the tax dollars that he pays to the government are being used to fund abortions that he believes are murder. Therefore, under duress, Carl is inadvertently funding abortions that he is convinced are wrong. The government is forcing him to walk against his own moral code, and we're not talking about something as mundane as swearing if you stub your toe. Here's the problem. With abortion on demand, only 1/4 of the people involved are being considered. The government must represent all of its citizens, and they are not. The government is ignoring the well-being of the unborn baby, ignoring the rights of the father, ignoring the morals of those who believe that tax dollars are being used to fund government-sanctioned murder. And I find all of that to be wrong. Point number 3, the Galileo spacecraft. Galileo was the first spacecraft to orbit the planet Jupiter. It did so for just shy of 8 years, from December of 1995 to September of 2003, and it sent back boatloads of information. At the end of its primary mission, project scientists commanded the spacecraft to crash itself into the planet Jupiter. This is an act that is still referred to as a sacrifice. Admittedly, the ship was low on fuel, but if you were to compare it to a car, it would be safe to say that the fuel light hadn't even come on yet. But even if it had, that doesn't explain why they would crash the probe. Why not just let it continue to do its job until its fuel is exhausted? Well, there's a perfectly good reason for it. In orbit around Jupiter is a moon called Europa. And Europa is very much the size of our moon. It's very comparable to our moon, except that it has an icy crust, ice made of water. Galileo found evidence that there might be a liquid ocean of water beneath that crust of water ice. Where there is water, theoretically, logically, there may also be life. And in fact, Galileo found evidence that there might be microbial life on Europa. It's unconfirmed, but there's still evidence. NASA wanted to protect that extraterrestrial life from contamination from terrestrial bacteria. So they chose to err on the side of caution and crash the probe into Jupiter, just in case Europa does indeed support life. And that makes sense. How does this apply? If the world can nod in approval at the destruction of a multi-million-dollar spacecraft that still could have returned all kinds of information to us, instead of taking the chance that it might crash into Europa and contaminate theoretical microbial life that we can't even begin to confirm its existence, then the human child in the womb deserves at least that same consideration. I'll take it one step further. The fact that we can't agree when humanity begins suggests to me that we should all the more fervently adapt the attitude of NASA scientists. They were uncertain that life exists on Europa, but they went to great lengths to protect that life anyway, just in case life does in fact exist there. In the same way, we should go to great lengths to protect the innocent unborn child, even if we are uncertain of its humanity, because there is the same chance, perhaps a much greater chance, that that is human life. And if it is, I submit that it is even more urgent to protect known human life on Earth than any theoretical microbial life on a distant world. I have been silent on this issue for far too long. I don't mean to make up for lost time, but I do intend to move forward. It seems to me that people don't really want abortion. What they want, it seems to me, is a life free of consequences. But you can't have a life free of consequences. It's not real. It doesn't exist. To all you mommies and potential mommies out there, as vital and urgently needed as you are only one part of this equation. It's not really all about you after all. Now, I have friends who are pro-choice, people I love, respect, admire. We must disagree on this issue because I can't change my mind, and I'm not going to try. I would like to leave you, though, with this assurance. When I make pro-life comments or pro-life posts, I will do my best to make sure that they are, in fact, pro-life, not anti-pro-choice, because I don't like mudslinging. I don't respect politicians who do it, and I don't like the idea of muddying myself in a vain attempt at muddying other people. I want to do everything I can in my power to make pro-life as attractive as possible, so that at the very least you will know that I can discuss this topic rationally, respectfully, and calmly. But make no mistake, if you are pro-choice, we are political adversaries on this issue. From where I stand, children's lives are at stake, and I'm going to do what I can to protect them. I'll do everything I can politically, monetarily, and socially to rid the world of this idea that abortion is a healthy option. And I would like to live to see its demise. Thank you for your time.